my new series where I teach you how to make a fursuit. At the end of this tutorial, you're going to have a head base that looks like this. You're going to need a roll of 1-inch foam, and you're going to cut it out by 28 by 12. If you need a tutorial on how to measure your head, just let me know. You're going to turn that piece into a little cylinder, and I just clip it first with some sewing clips just to make sure that it looks right. And then I'm going to glue it all the way down with hot glue. I left the end of this one not glued because that's the part that sits on the back of your neck. And I always end up just cutting it off anyway later, so I didn't bother. You're going to measure across the cylinder and take the middle. On mine it's 4 inches. And you're just going to make a 4-inch line all the way across your cylinder. It doesn't need to be perfect, that's okay. And then you're going to do 3 1/4 tick marks all the way across. And these are going to become your little triangles. You can eyeball these too, they don't need to be perfect. Just make little triangles that point to the top, shade the tops, and then you're going to cut out all of the triangles on the top. Once you're done cutting, it's going to look like a little crown, and you're going to glue all of the triangles on both sides to their neighbor. This part is probably going to take you the longest, and I sped this up at like times 50, and then when you're done, it's going to look like a little dome. You're going to put this on your head, and make sure it is as flush against the top of your head as possible. With the head on you, you're going to feel around and make a little dot where your eyes are, where your nose is, and where the bottom of your chin is. Make a little triangle. You can, again, just estimate this, where the top of the nose is and the bottom of the chin. We're going to end up cutting that out, and that's going to be where you breathe out of, and that's going to be the structure for the muzzle later. You can put this on and off just to make sure it fits comfortably. I like when it sits right at the top of my nose and right under my chin. It makes it feel kind of like a helmet. It makes it feel really secure. And then you've made your base. Congratulations! Welcome back to my series where I teach you how to make a fursuit. By the end of this tutorial, you should have something that looks like this. You're going to need the base you made from the first tutorial, as well as some 2-inch thick upholstery foam. I always start by drafting out what I want the muzzle to look like, just on a piece of paper, and using that as my pattern on the foam. Once I like it, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my foam. I just eyeball like a 5 by 6 inch piece of this. I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half, just to add some more width. You're going to add some hot glue only to the middle, that way you can still cut around the edges and not have to cut through the thick glue. Then you're going to use the pattern that you cut out right at the beginning. Draw a rough outline of kind of what you want it to look like, just as a guide, and then you just start cutting. A lot of cutting. And this is what I call the Squidward face, as you can see why. Shaping the muzzle is honestly the most stressful part for me because the muzzle is, I feel like, what most defines your species and your character, and getting that to look right is really hard, especially when you're starting from absolutely nothing, you know. So have a lot of patience for this step. Don't be afraid to redo it. Cut out some new foam and try again if you accidentally cut too much, or if you don't like it by the end. Keep putting up to your head base throughout the cutting process just to make sure that you're still following that initial goal of what you wanted the muzzle to look like. And you always notice more too when you see it actually on the base and you're like, oh, that didn't look right, let me just cut that a little bit more. Once you have the muzzle kind of looking how you want it to, you can start cutting out the bottom part of the jaw. You're just going to grab another chunk of foam, using the top piece as your guide, make a little triangle or a U shape, and just start cutting. Don't be afraid to really hollow out this piece too, and keep using your upper muzzle piece as a guide for how big an angle you need this bottom piece to be. Once you like how you've shaped it to start, you can start gluing it. I always glue the bottom jaw first, just because it goes right at the bottom of the triangle that we cut out on the head base. And I want this head to be more of a kimono style, so I'm going to put the muzzle right in between the eyes. Once the glue is dried, you are now finished with this step. You are one piece closer to having brought your character to life. Congratulations! Yay! Hello? 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 Welcome back to my series where I teach you how to make a fursuit. Today we're going to go from this to this. It's kind of a long one, so just craft at your own pace. You're going to need the base with the muzzle from the last tutorial, your foam, and your eye blanks. Start by putting the eye blanks right onto the head base and just tracing them out with a Sharpie. Draw a line from the front and the back, and that'll be the outline for our eyebrows later. Then with a piece of paper, you're going to draft out where your cheek foam is going to go. And then once you like it, cut it out of your 1-inch foam. This is going to sit right underneath where we trace that eye blank, and it's going to go right up against the muzzle. I'm also cutting the corner of my mouth into this piece, so I'm just going to do that now. Once you like how it fits, you can go ahead and glue it on. And don't forget the other side. Once those are glued on, we can move on to the eyebrows. You're going to cut out 2 long bean-shaped pieces of foam and put those right in between those eyebrow marks we made earlier with the eye blanks. Check to make sure the eye blanks fit as you originally had intended them to. And then you can start cutting. What you're doing for this step is just taking out all those sharp, square edges of the foam and just smoothing them out. It doesn't need to be anything crazy or fancy, just take those hard edges out of the foam. And then I'm going to add a layer of foam for the cheekbone structure, and that goes right at the bottom outer corner of the eye. And then cut that too. When you're cutting the eyebrow structure, try to keep the middle part higher and cut the outer part lower. Sorry, that's really hard to explain, but it should be bigger on the inside and smaller on the outside. Trim the bottom of the jaw to the bottom of the chin, insert cool transition, and boom. Both sides should look about the same. Adding a structural nose piece here. Cut that out and glue it on. And then this suit is going to be a cat, so I'm adding that nose bridge onto the muzzle here. And then to make those eyebrows even more pronounced, I'm just going to add one more chunk of foam right at the top. And then smooth it all out with your scissors. Try to hold these scissors as flat against the foam as possible, and it'll give you a really nice shave. Or cut, I guess. And then smooth out those eyebrow pieces too. Now that we have the basic bone structure, we can start smoothing down all the pieces and cleaning up those edges. And then I'm just adding a bit more structure to the bottom of the chin. And then test your eye blanks again. There's probably going to be gaps that we're going to need to fill in, so go ahead and do that by just adding in little pieces of foam all the way around, and then slimming those out as well. And then smooth them all out together. This is really making that nose bridge be more pronounced. Add some pieces to the outside too, just to hold the eye blank in place, and then trim them to match whatever the outside of that foam looks like. They should be like the same height. And then we can cut off the bottom of the head base that we didn't use, And then the cut on the back of the head base should be angled upwards. This is so that when you look up in your suit, you don't lose any of your range of motion. And now that you have a good base, you can go ahead and start on the ears. Using your cheek foam as a reference for where they're going to sit on the head, you can draft it out in paper first, and then cut it out of your 1-inch foam. And then I put them together and just trim, just to make sure that they're the exact same shape. And then I put it onto the head and kind of see where the dome of the base goes, so I can cut that out too. And then I pin them onto the head before I glue them, just to see how I like it. And I didn't end up liking the shape of these, so I trimmed them a little bit. You can add random scraps from your foam to the inner and outer pieces, just to give it that three-dimensional look. And then trim all the square edges off of those pieces of foam too. And then repin it back onto the base just to make sure you like it now that it's cleaned up a little bit. And do the same on the other ear. And then I like to add more dimension onto the back of the ear, so I'm just going to take more of my scraps and glue those on and do some more trimming. Trim all the square edges off, make it look really smooth, and then do the same on the other ear. And then I added one more piece of foam just to make it look really three-dimensional, trimming it up, and then just glue it on. I always glue it on where it's pinned, just to make sure that it doesn't move too much from where I've placed it and where I like it. And then follow the exact same process for the other ear. After looking at it, I decided that it was kind of missing something, so I went ahead and added a center mohawk piece. Same process, cutting it out of paper, and then cutting it out of my 1-inch foam, seeing if I like it, and then gluing it on, and trim. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck making your own head bases.
kids, we're going to show you how to make finger escapes in your hand paws. Okay, this is the other paw of those. This is my personal pair of paws, and I have the bottom here where I've done everything except stuff the paw pads. And when I sewed on the fingers, I left a gap in between. So this gap is, as long as you want to make it, this one's probably, these sometimes are a little bit too long. And you could just sew the edges up a little bit more later. But that's how you want to leave it, because that's where your fingers are going to go through. So then I have the lining, which is cotton. I like to use cotton as a lining because it's very comfortable and it's washable. You want to pre-wash your cotton and then cut out the fingers like a little cheap glove shape, and then I just straight stitch all around. Make sure that you can get at least 2 fingers in to each of, well, make sure you can get at least 2 fingers into each one of these, because you don't know how you're eventually going to put your fingers in. And then you want to decide exactly where you want your finger escapes placed, which means you need to have your lining in exactly the right place. And then make sure that you clip them down at the fingers. This is all bunchy because there are actually some clips there I'm going to show you. And this one's not pinned because this one's actually done. So I can show you it. So once you have your lining clipped where you want, you flip this over, make sure everything's nice and neat and straight, and you take a pencil and be real careful, because you probably can see I got some graphite on the white fabric here, which is very irritating to me. I can clean that off, and these are my personal paws, so it's not as big a deal as it would be if this was for a client. But just be aware, if you're using light colored fabric, you might not want to use a pencil. You might want to use like a friction pin or a fabric pin, where eventually it will just, the line will just fade on its own. But you want to get down in here with whatever you mark it with, and you just go side to side and make a mark on the lining where exactly this hole goes. And then you take that, you can see I made a couple of false starts here before I had it adjusted the way I wanted it. Take a sharp pair of scissors and you clip exactly where the line is. You want a sharp pair of scissors because the neater that line is, or the neater the cut, the neater your sewing will be. Don't go through both sides, just the first side, so be a little bit careful with that. So then you want to start your sewing, and you want to start from the bottom so you can keep the tops clipped. So you move it like this, and you do a very simple but very small blanket stitch, just like you would for any marking. But keep in mind, you don't want the seam to be visible if somebody is looking at your paws, and you also don't want to feel it with your fingers when you're using your paws. So you want the seam to be on the inside where it is here, which means that you have to get the fabric clipped like this instead of what is more easy to start with, where you would just like sew it together like this, ta-da-da, so. You also want to start with the middle fingers and not the edges, because otherwise you won't be able to get up here once these are sewn down. It's just going to be really impossible. So make sure, because cotton does kind of unravel, you can see right here, you don't want to sew so close to the edge that the fabric will unravel and the threads will pull through eventually. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you don't leave so much of a seam allowance that you can't get your fingers through later. So it's kind of, I don't know how well you can see this. Let me take a look here. This one's probably more visible. You want the stitches to be very close together and as neat as possible, and to come down there. Can you see my stitching? So you do this side first, where I've got it clipped, and then you can tie that off and then start on the other side, or what I do is usually like make a little knot and then come on the other side, clip it, pull the needle through here, sew a couple of stitches on the sides if I need to, sew this up if it doesn't quite match, just, you know, make everything neat and tidy. Then do the same thing along here. close it up over here, and then knot it off, and then you do the rest of them. So, and basically at that point, everything's unclipped, and the only seams holding the lining to the paws are on the finger escapes. Make sure, absolutely sure, that you are not sewing through both sides of the fabric either. And then, what I like to do to keep the fingers in place is to just do a little whip stitch at the top to hold them in place, and that's all you need, because the rest of the sewing to put the paws together, it's really very much like magic, especially since you should be putting a cuff of some kind that's going to catch this fabric and hold it in place around the cuff. You don't have to worry about sewing it anywhere else. It's just fine, and then you will have finger escapes, which is kind of amazing.
Fursuit hair.
Hello everybody, today I will be teaching you how I do fursuit teeth, because I struggled a lot with this guy and I think I figured it out, so I'm going to share what I learned through my research of making teeth, and hopefully it will help you as much as it helped me. So, this is a hyena skull. The character I'm making is a hyena, so I was looking at hyena teeth, and you'll notice that not every peak is an individual tooth, which is what I was imagining in my head as. There are actually more than one peak per tooth, and each tooth is split up in the mouth. They're not right next to each other. So what you should do is actually have gaps in your teeth, and that gives a really accurate impression of canine teeth. And you also notice there's two different kinds of teeth. There's tricuspids, which have 3 peaks, and dicuspids, which have 2 peaks. So what I was trying to do initially was mash all the dicuspids and the tricuspids into one strip so that I could sew it into the mouth, but that looks really weird and funky. So what you have to do is split up the dicuspids and tricuspids, and it looks way better when it has gaps in them. And also hyenas have this like really crazy back top molar, which is like a quadruple cuspid. I don't know what it's called, but I tried to mimic that. And yeah, that's all I have for you. I hope you learned something. Goodbye!